Hello and welcome. Today we're looking at how to hack our very own Minerva exclusive Iris cardigan, and we're going to look at taking the basic shape that we've got here, and then we're going to extend the sleeves to be long sleeved, so really nice and cozy for the winter, and we're also going to add a tie belt detail to the pattern. So those are the two little hacks that we're going to do, and in today's video I'm going to talk you through step by step how to do that. I'm going to show you how to alter the pattern pieces and then how to do the critical steps of sewing up anything that is different to the standard instruction pack that's in here. Now, as you follow along today, you're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools listed next to me here, and along with that obviously you're going to need to purchase your own copy of the Iris cardigan, which you can find on our website. It's worth noting that as with all of our Minerva exclusive patterns, if you pop onto our YouTube channel, you'll find 3 other videos which are going to be really helpful to help you succeed in sewing up this pattern beautifully if you need extra support. The first pattern we've got is a fabric recommendation pattern, so just in case you're not sure what type of fabric could be suitable for the Iris cardigan, take a look at that video. We've also got a fit video which shows you the key sort of critical areas that you might need to alter in order to perfect the fit to fit your body beautifully. And then we also have a sew along. Now the sew along follows the instructions as listed in this book, but you can refer to those if you're uncertain of any steps as we're sewing together today. As I said, I'm just going to be talking you through the sewing process of any of the areas that we've hacked and altered. So if you want extra support with the remaining steps, check out that little sew along. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draft those lovely long sleeves. Now, as you'll notice, on this particular pattern, the sleeve is very gentle. It is a really soft little curve. I mean, you could just very simply add a rectangle on that is the length of the sleeve that you want. However, I'm just going to show you a slightly more refined way of drawing a nice little sleeve onto here. So let's do that together. Grab a piece of paper and I want you just to draw a line straight down and straight across. Next, use your pattern drafting ruler to mark the seam allowance on the sleeve, which is 1.5 centimetres. Next, grab a little owl or something that is sharp that you can poke a hole through here, at that junction where the seam allowance is, just right there. Do the same for this one down here, at that junction there. Next, pop your owl through this side here, and then match it up through that hole there, and then match it up with that junction there. Line the two up so that they are perfectly aligned. Then rotate this along so that the dashed line here at the top up here matches up with the straight line underneath. Hold that in place while you then grab a pen and pop a little point where that seam allowance hole was down there. Just like that. Mark a point now that is 1 centimetre below that point you just marked, like that. Then mark a point that is 2 centimetres down from this top line here. Join those 2 reference points with a nice straight dashed line. Next, divide that line into 3 equal segments. For me, it was 7 centimetres each. What we want to do now is just use these sort of guides as a little help point to create a shape, which is very gentle, just going to kind of come in from there and up there. But fundamentally, we just want like a nice straight line up here. So then just kind of draw a nice curve, cutting through this final one down here, and then rotating around to hit that bottom one really gently and beautifully. So it's a very, very sort of gentle shape, that, isn't it? It's not a particularly exaggerated cuff line, but that actually reflects what we're seeing on the front pattern piece as well. So effectively, this is going to be our sleeve head up here. It's going to match up with that. And then that's just going to curve in to create a bit more of a kind of drop in the sleeve. So when those two are joined together, you can see that it's going to give the extra volume we need up here to kind of angle the sleeve down a little bit, which is going to be absolutely perfect, exactly what we want. So what we need to do now is to decide the length of the sleeve that we want. Now, I've said I want to do a full length sleeve, so let's take a look at how we do that. So measure your arm from your neck point up here all the way down your arm to your wrist down here, or to whatever length you want to create your sleeve for. What we're going to do is just mark the seam allowance on here at this corner up here, which is 1.5 centimetres. What we mustn't forget at this point is that we also have a neck band, which is 1.5 centimetres wide in total. So actually, we want to really be measuring from here all the way down to the sleeve end, simply because we've got the neck band, which is going to be sewn on at that point. So what I'd recommend you do is that you line up this hole here with that point there once again, and then just rotate it round until it's all completely straight, just like that. So the seam allowance is all like beautifully touching. Okay, great. So for me, I want my sleeve in total to be 70 centimetres long. So I am just going to mark a point and extend this line until it is 70 centimetres from this point up here, because we need to allow for the neckband, all the way down to here. And then just square down. Now at this point you've got some decisions to make in terms of how wide you want your cuff to be for your cardigan. So it really is your own preference. You could add a cuff onto the bottom if you wanted to give it a bit more drama. You could have a gathered sleeve where you sort of cinch it in and it makes a bit of a more dramatic effect. But I feel like this whole garment is quite kind of flowy and quite loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark this at 13 centimetres down from there. I'm then going to square off a little bit here, just dash it out to start off with to give us a nice little guide. And then I basically just want to find a nice kind of soft curve that leads me into that shape. Something like that. Okay, fabulous. So now we've got a fun little shape here. What we need to do is to add our seam allowances to this, because we've drafted the whole thing without seam allowances so far. So at this point here, I'm actually going to create a hem that is 4 centimetres deep. And the reason for that is because I want to be able to tuck it under really nicely and still have like quite a lot of the fabric underneath that you can see, because it's quite a big cuff, isn't it? So I still want to be able to see a lot of the fabric on the inside. And then add your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to the remaining sleeve piece. The only thing left to do now is just to annotate the pattern piece. Okay, so there we have it. We've completed the pattern piece, added our seam allowance around the perimeter at the top here, underneath, and then we obviously added the 4 centimetre hem here. We did not add a seam allowance to the top here because we're going to place that on the fold, and then we're going to cut 2 on the fold. And that's going to create our 2 gorgeous sleeves. Okay, sleeves are done. Now let's move on to the tie belt. Okay, to do our belt, we're just going to tap in a few quick dimensions. So grab your waist circumference, tap that into your calculator and divide it by 2. And then add 30 centimetres. Whatever distance you've got there, we're just going to draw a line that is that long. For me, it's 70 centimetres. Next, tap in your width that you want. I want my belt to be 4 centimetres long. Times that width by 2. Then draw a parallel line that is that distance offset from your first line. For me, it's just 8 centimetres. Square down on the corners to create a lovely rectangle. Now, depending on the width of the pattern piece here, if it is more than 73 centimetres, then you're going to want to add a seam allowance all the way around and cut 4 pattern pieces. If it is less than 73 centimetres, you can just obviously cut it on the fold here once you've folded your fabric in half, providing and assuming, of course, that your fabric is 1.5 centimetres. So do whatever you need to in terms of seam allowance at this point. Finish drafting your pattern piece here by just saying, by naming the pattern piece and saying you're going to cut 1 on fold, which I'm going to do here, or obviously if you have added a seam allowance to that side, and then it will be a case of cutting 2. The only other thing we need to do is to create a belt loop to tie into the side seam. So our belt loop needs to be at least 4 centimetres wide in order to accommodate this. So tap 4 centimetres into your calculator, but then it needs to have extra to go into the seam allowance. So it needs an extra 3 centimetres for seam allowance. So 4 plus 3 is 7 centimetres. So our belt loops need to be at least 7 centimetres. But when we create them, they're going to sort of fold in and around onto themselves. So I'm actually going to add another 2 centimetres to give it just a little bit of space to kind of bend backwards and fold in place. You'll see what I mean when we sew it up. So then draw a little rectangle that is 9 centimetres by 4.5 centimetres. So just annotate that to say it's the Iris Cardigan belt loop and cut 2. Now the final thing to do is to actually mark on with a little notch on our front pattern piece where those belt loops need to tie into. So here is our front pattern piece. Basically, the waistline is about halfway between the underarm and this notch here. So just find the midpoint between the two and just mark it on at this point here. That's going to act as our little notch to know where the belt loop needs to go, and then just add another notch 4 centimetres below that. So that's the top and the bottom of the belt loops. And there we go, we've done it. We've done all the pattern drafting that we need to do to make these gorgeous little alterations. What we're going to do now is to sew it up together, and of course, as mentioned previously, we're only going to demo the bits that have changed from the original pattern instructions. If you need support with the original steps as we sort of scan through those bits, then please refer back to the other sew along that we have on our YouTube channel. Let's get straight on into it and start sewing it up. The fabric I've chosen to sew up this version in is our Minerva exclusive Inky Delta Pointy Roma double stretch knit fabric. It has got 40% stretch widthways and 20% stretch lengthways. It's made of 23% viscose and 74% polyester with 3% elastane, which is giving it its gorgeous little amount of stretch. So it's got a good amount of structure and it's going to look absolutely fabulous in this pattern. As mentioned previously, we're just going to be following the sewing instructions in our Minerva booklet, and at any points where we deviate from the booklet, I'll then give you a little demo. So to start off with, we're just going to prepare the neckband. We're then going to do step 2, which is to sew the shoulder seams together, and then you're going to come back and join me before we move on to step 3. Wonderful. So once you've sewn the shoulders together, we're actually then going to attach our sleeves onto this section here. So grab one of your sleeve pattern pieces. Now actually it doesn't matter for this jersey pattern which one you grab because they're symmetrical. And then we're just going to line it up with right sides together all the way along the sleeve section here. Now if you want to, you can fold it in half and just snip it at the centre as a nice little notch just to help guide you where that bit should line up with the shoulder seam. Now I am expecting us to have to ease it in slightly because don't forget the sleeve head was a little bit curvy and we are attaching that to a straight line. And the reason the sleeve was curvy is simply because it's going to curve around the top of our shoulder. Brilliant. So once you pinned that, we're then going to sew it and overlock it or finish it however you would like, and then repeat for the other sleeve too. Okay, so now we've got our sleeve attached to our front and also back. We've got it attached there, but it's not in a tube shape yet. It's just attached at the shoulder. So the next thing we're going to do is do step 3, which is very simply just to sort of prep the finish of this section here, the garment. So this is the front of the body of the cardigan. We're literally just going to overlock about 10 centimetres above this little notch here. And we're going to overlock from there down and then pivot into that shape there. So we've got a nice little L shape of overlock. You can see it in the image here. We're going to do that on both the front and also both the back pattern pieces. Okay, so just like that, it's just a really small section just like that. Now that we've prepped step 3, we're going to move on and create these little belt loops which are going to then attach into the side seam before we sew it. The simplest way to do that is just to fold them in half lengthways, sew them down the long side and then just turn them right side out. So let's do that. Okay, just like that. So we've got 2 nice little loops. Now on the front piece, do you remember we put a little notch where we wanted the loops to go? So we can just like pin that in place and then just tack that in place and do the same for the other side. Then once you've tacked it in place, just like that, we're then going to lay the right sides together and we're just going to sew the side seam. Now we're going to pin and sew it as per the instructions, and we're going to start to sew it and pin it from this point here where there was the circle on the pattern piece. Just make sure, so the only difference here compared to the instructions is just that we've actually got a big long sleeve to sew as well. So we're just going to continue sewing a much longer sleeve, and that's the only difference. So once you've pinned that, we're going to sew from here all the way up, across underneath the arm, and all the way down the sleeve. Let's do that on this one and repeat for the other side, and then we're just going to finish it using an overlocker or your preferred method. Excellent. So now we've got something that resembles a cardigan, haven't we? We've got a nice long sleeve attached and sewn in all the way around down to that point down there. And if we open it up, we've got a nice little belt loop on the inside too. Okay, at this point, you can just follow the instructions as per the instruction booklet in terms of hemming and sewing that slit, and also sewing the neckband onto the garment. Once you've sewn the whole garment, come back and join me and we will sew the belt together. So we've got our nice big long belt here. All we're going to do is very similar to the neckband, is we're just going to fold it in half lengthways to start off with, and then just pin it together along the long length. So pin it along its entire length, and what we're going to do is we're going to sew along the short end all the way along, to a point sort of in the middle. I've got a set of double pins here where I'm going to leave a gap. Then I'm going to continue sewing from this double pin all the way along to the other side. Wonderful. And once you've sewn all of that together, we're just going to snip and trim the ends and just snip across the corners, just to soften that impact a little bit. Do the same for the other end. Excellent. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're literally just going to turn it right side out. Excellent. Give that all a really nice press, and then wherever the little gap is in the middle, we're just going to sew that little gap together, and then that's our belt loop done. I'm just going to sew really close to the folded edge and just try and capture it really nicely and neatly. You may want to just hand stitch that to give it a nice finish. Brilliant. Once that's done, let's go and see what it looks like. Here's our lovely cardigan with our gorgeous long sleeves that just give an extra little bit of warmth, and the tie belt is just helping it sort of wrap around us really beautifully. I think this works really well in this fabric. I can also imagine it in some lovely soft silky fabric as well, like with a bit of stretch to it as well, and I just think that would give you a little bit of a glamorous alternative to making it again. So please have loads of fun hacking that pattern in that way. It's been super fun to show you how to do that today. So thank you so much for joining me today. I have really enjoyed hacking that pattern, adding those long sleeves and just making it look super dramatic. I do hope you've had fun with that at home as well. Don't forget that you can like and subscribe to our Minerva YouTube channel for daily content that is uploaded. We have some fantastic tutorials there, top tips and tricks, as well as sew-alongs and lots of lovely fabric focused videos so that you guys at home can get a really good feel for how to sew and what types of fabric to sew with. So thanks for joining me. I will see you next time.